Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone who is shuffling in, if you would use the chat feature and share where you're calling in from, what your role is, maybe what company you're at, just a few get to know you things. What's the weather like where you are right now? I'm in Utah and we just finally got the weather to break. It's like nice and sunny out and people are happy again. So it's an exciting time to be here. All right. Oh, we have people from all over. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. This is going to be a great one. Sabina and I have been talking and preparing for this, and you know it's going to be good when you are excited and just motivated by the content as it's getting prepared, and you feel like you're learning as it's going. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to get started here in just a few seconds. As you come in, I'm sure you're seeing everybody else do it, but yeah, share where you're from, what company, how things are going out where you are, and yeah, thanks for joining us. We are really privileged to have Sabina with us today. I'm going to turn the time over to Sabina in just a moment, who will give a more full introduction. But Sabina is the CEO, Chief Executive Officer, and Chief Customer Officer of Growth Molecules. And one of the things that made us want to do this webinar with Sabina is because she has walked the walk before, not only talked the talk. Everything that we've talked about, she's done, not only consulted other people on how to do, but she's done in her own businesses. She's seen businesses grow tremendously, and the rest of her team has as well. So Growth Molecules is in a really unique and impressive spot from that standpoint. And today we're going to be talking about customer journey mapping. So whether you're here to learn about it from A to Z and you have influence over the whole experience, or you have influence over one part of the customer experience, the principles we're going to talk about today apply left and right. So Sabina, let me turn it over to you. You're welcome to share your screen and we can jump right in.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate the warm welcome, and I'm glad to be here. All right. So as Harris mentioned, I am the CEO and CCO of Growth Molecules, and I've been partnering with GUIDEcx for a few years now. So it's my honor and pleasure to be here with you today. Our session is intended to be interactive. We will have a few things where I'm going to look for your participation. And Harris is also going to participate, asking some questions, layering in his expertise, and fielding questions as they come in from you as well. So before we dive in, I want to set the stage a little bit and think about what your experiences are like when you're going to a dinner party or perhaps throwing a dinner party. I'm at that point where I love them and hate them. I love them. All right. If I'm hosting them, I love the preparation. I don't love the cleanup. But when you think about customer journey mapping, it's really like preparing that meal. It's preparing that experience. You don't just want to have, one great dish. You want to be thoughtful about what the room lighting is like when your guests show up, what the music is like, what are the appetizers, and how does that flow into your entree and perhaps dessert and coffee to go with it. So, the catch is that when you're planning that party, you really want to try to impress your guests and you want to seek to be creative, but also keep it low cost because you don't want to break the bank. So similarly in technology and in the space that we're all in, we need to be thoughtful about that. So today I'm going to take you through just level setting and what we mean by lifecycle mapping or customer journey mapping. Those basically mean similar things, mostly the same. We'll talk through key principles to help elevate customer experience, my 3 favorite principles in particular. And from there, we will share innovative and low-cost tactics. So some things that you can do where you and your company are today with budget that are a little bit creative and different and things that you might not have heard of before. So the idea is to make them actionable so you can go pilot and try some things yourself. And I mentioned before, we'll be sure to leave time for Q&A. So that brings us to our first poll. I would love to hear what your biggest challenge is when trying to create personable, memorable experiences.
Feel free to leave those in the chat there. I'm going to launch this poll in the Zoom, so anyone who can see it in their Zoom, that poll just launched, so you should be able to select or write out your answer there and leave it. But if you haven't seen that, feel free to just use the chat.
So some examples that might get your thoughts stimulated on this one. Some people have told me before that it's difficult to balance the scale without losing personal touch.
Yeah.
Right. It's very common that we had a lot of white glove treatments, even 10, 15 years ago with CS, but we're doing more with less. So it's not possible to have a weekly call with every customer. So what are some challenges that you might be facing out there?
I also like this with the hosting a dinner party example, because you may not be able to circulate depending on how big the party is and have one-on-one time with every single person there, but you still want everyone to have a great experience.
That's a good one.
Yep.
As you're saying, that reminds me of, mind you, I got married 19 years ago, but the point for us was to have a small wedding to keep costs down, but also I wanted to have a night where I got to talk to everybody. I wanted to
Yeah.
be with everyone and actually enjoy, the best people coming together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know common ones that people have, other ones that we've heard in the past. We can close the poll, Harris. Is
Right.
scaling without losing personal touch is one we talked about, but also identifying the right touch points to focus on. That's typically challenging for teams as well. And then we do these things, we make these efforts, but how do we really measure that impact? And so that can be challenging from time to time. So today we're going to get into some of those things to help you and support you. First, a quick overview as to who I am and why I'm here and what Growth Molecules is. We are a management consulting firm that also has a strong technology practice where we help implement and optimize tools within the customer experience ecosystem. We are 4.5 years old and we are global across 3 continents. And all of us have been practitioners first and foremost, meaning we've been CSMs, we've been heads of support, launched communities, we've got people who have owned, revenue through the whole cycle, whole customer life cycle and other roles in between. So we first have learned those skills and are applying them every day with our current customers. We get to work with about 85 customers a year, helping them protect and grow their recurring revenue. So now I want to, as I mentioned, give you some key tips here on customer lifecycle mapping and what we mean when we're talking about lifecycle mapping. But the thing that most importantly, keeping in mind and learning from one of the best in the world as it relates to experience is Disney. And this thought that somebody always owns the moment. I loved this when I first heard it years ago. And what it means to me is that regardless of your role or your title or the amount of work on your plate that day, when you're engaging with a customer or even a vendor, right, anybody external to your company, you have a responsibility to do the best that you can to make sure that they're nurtured. You may not be able to go write the code to fix a potential bug, but you could be the person that escalates it internally, or that at least keeps the customer apprised that we didn't forget about you. My team is working on it. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Those are really important things. And the Disney piece for me is thinking about, right, I was talking to Harris before this call. If you ever have noticed in a Disney park that if there's a piece of trash on the ground, for example, if executives are walking through, it doesn't matter that they're not part of the grounds crew or the janitorial staff. Like they'll bend over and pick it up and throw it in the trash. And that's part of that holistic mindset of we all own that moment with a customer. We are all in the journey. I know that sounds like a nice fluffy, I'm from California, nice California fluffy thing to say, but it's really true. I mean, it's something we have to be mindful of to whatever extent possible.
Well, and Sabina, one thing that stands out to me there, I guess, especially applying it to our world, is the principle here is just that sometimes we get so caught up in our role and our responsibilities and our internal kind of, maybe tensions or successes with other departments and teams, and knowing clearly, okay, no, your team does this and I do this. And there is importance to that, as we'll get into, each team doing their job and making sure that they do their best. But from the customer's perspective, they just want a clean park. The customer's not thinking, wait a minute, did the janitorial staff clean up that trash? Or was it an executive who cleaned up that trash? Ah, the right person cleaned up that trash. Like the customer doesn't care. They just want a clean park. So it's wonderful that Disney and all of us try to create an experience where there are clear roles and responsibilities and we all understand what we need to do. But at the end of the day, if we lose sight of the fact that we're building this for our customers, then everything kind of falls apart.
You got it. Yeah, you just don't want, you want to know that your 3-year-old isn't going to bend over and pick up somebody else's used lollipop and, have like COVID or something, right? So when we're thinking about level setting on this conversation, right, we've got all kinds of different levels of folks on the phone today and different company maturities. And it's important to set the foundation. Talk about this dinner party concept. And when you're looking at, maybe meal planning and you're thinking about what you're going to prepare and what you're going to serve when, what music you want, as I mentioned, what the ultimate timing of guest arrival is relative to when the appetizer should be ready, especially if it's a warm appetizer. All those things are really thoughtful and intentional when you're hosting a dinner party. And the same type of intention should be established in nurturing your customer experiences. So when we're talking about lifecycle mapping, right, it's managing the touch points that your customer will receive in engaging with your products or your services or your people. And that can be from the initial awareness. It should be from the initial awareness when they're maybe looking at G2 to research your software. It could be when they're at an industry event and there's a word of mouth conversation that's come up because somebody else had a remarkable experience.
Yep.
It's all the way through to the purchase decision and then beyond. And a lot of times, even in this viewpoint here, it shows renewal as the end. It's not linear, just as Harris said, with org charts and roles, responsibilities, it's just a framework to help keep our minds organized. The reality is, if we're doing this well, it's a circle or an infinity sign,
Yes.
right? If we're doing it the right way, a renewal should be kind of a non-event, and
Yep.
it should just flow naturally. Not always the case, but we need to have that drive behind that. And so when we're looking across these different things, right, you look at all those touch points all the way through. What is the vibe that you're trying to give to your customers? What is the vibe you want to exude at your dinner party? So thinking about that, touch points, every single piece of that is important. And the reason it's important is not only because it feels good, because they might be loyal, but it's because it has remarkable impact on revenue. So businesses that journey map actually see a 15 to 20% increase in customer retention. And what's more, this next stat I'm going to show is crazy, in my opinion, is that according to the Harvard Business Review, just a simple 5% increase in customer retention can produce up to 25% increase in profit.
Jeez.
So, yeah.
Yeah, these are worth not skipping over. I mean, I am just like in awe of that, and I'm sure. And by the way, let me also just as a good dinner party host here, make sure everyone knows. Thank you for introducing yourself in the chat. Also, as we're going, if questions come to mind, throw them in there, and I'll try to be good at voicing them and making sure that we get answers to them. But this one, for example, I see this and I just think, wow, like taking the time, and one of the questions I have for you, and I know we'll talk about this later, but as we were preparing, this was kind of a big aha moment for me. Taking the time, and it does take considerable time to put this together, it yields some really big results. So for everyone out there, if you are wondering, well, how do I organize the team to do this? How do I get time on, my exec team's calendar, or how do I get time with these individuals? Like these are expensive meetings, as sometimes we refer to them. I think these are two things you want to screenshot or write down and make sure that people understand this is why we're doing this. It's not just because we'll now have a really nice looking customer journey map. It's because we could improve our retention by 15 to 20%. It's because by even just improving it by 5%, we could increase our profits by a quarter or more. So these are things that I think are really important when you look at how do I operationalize this at my company right now. You have to draw the full picture of why we're doing it, and these numbers, I don't see anyone arguing with. These are things that you clear your calendar for to make these initiatives work.
Kate, I see some good questions in here. Awesome. So for example, when we're talking about, real life examples, so this is a study by Harvard University, and that is an Ivy League institution. Real life practical application, I can speak to a customer that we did a project with. They did a case study with us, so I'm glad to share. But Virtuous, they're a social good CRM software, and we did a full journey mapping exercise with them over the course of several days, cross-functional representation from sales and product and marketing, operations, success, support, I think professional services. And after 6 months of completing that project and deploying operationalizing these new touch points within their business, they saw significant ROI. They had an increase of 5% of gross dollar renewal rate. I think it was 7% of net dollar renewal rate. And they reduced their time to first value for their customers by over 60 days. And that was just within 6 months. And that was our first pass. It was a V1. So, these stats, there's different ranges, and I can follow up afterwards and share, where the data came from, so you could share it internally. Absolutely. What my team is going to be doing in our newsletter next week is creating a quick guide that helps you sell the concept of journey mapping internally, whether you partner with somebody like us or do it yourself. Either way, of course, it's just getting something started. Got to start where you are and make little incremental movements forward. So the 3 key principles that I swear by, I think are the most critical, not just in B2B technology, but honestly in any business model. You can subscribe to the newsletter at growthmolecules.com. And afterwards, there's a QR code we'll be sharing in a little bit that you can use to book time with me, and I can help answer more questions for you as well. So as far as 3 key principles, these are really important to me. These are my favorite 3, and they're tied to personalization, proactivity, and efficiency. So these are the principles around engagement strategies that will help you create, durable, efficient, and meaningful touch points. And so I want to dive into those a little bit more with you. We talk about, you've probably heard the old adage that, children should be seen and not heard. The opposite is true with our customers. Our customers should be seen and they should be heard. And it's important, even when you're a CSM, maybe managing 500 accounts, or it's a pooled model, or even a full digital touch model, we still have the opportunity to really know who our customers are. We can know more about them now than ever because of data. Of course, the best way in any case is to ask them, what matters to you, right? What is your preference for communication? Why is your team focused on looking at growing your user base in this particular product line? This is like akin to asking your guests if they have a food allergy before they show up, right? You don't want to accidentally serve your guests shellfish and find out they're going to go into anaphylactic shock. Like, that's not a good idea. Or similarly, as you see in this photo here, if you're going to an event, you're asked your meal preferences. If you're vegetarian, they might put a little marker on your tent card, like the green thing here, to show that you need a vegetarian meal. Not only did you pre-communicate that, but there's also a reminder for the server that's actually about to serve your plate. So there's many ways that we can digest this and think about this, right? When you're looking at information that's captured in the pre-sales process, especially when deal cycles are so much longer right now, there's a lot of discovery, a lot of conversation, a lot of things are changing with businesses. So when they first engaged your sales team, did some mapping with their solutions consulting team, they got to the point where by the time they signed the contract, things have changed again because their market is weird. The economy is weird. Maybe they had their champion change jobs or got laid off, unfortunately. So continually asking our customers is important. It's important to ask, it's important to ask once, but it can evolve. So asking along the way in a way that's being captured so that the next team member on your team can view that information somewhere and understand, oh, this person's a vegetarian. And they don't have to feel like they weren't heard the first time.
Yep. And I think it's so critical because we often accidentally let the B2B world make us forget that we're working with people, right? Not businesses. Like you may be working with Nike, but you're working with Sarah at Nike, or you're working with this individual, right? And that individual, you don't want to waste their time. You want to make sure they know that you have heard them throughout the process of this journey. A quick confirmation may help, right? If I'm to continue the analogy, if I'm putting the plate down, say, and you had the vegetarian, right? And just in case, Robert in this example says, oh, no, that was a mistake. But being able to quickly confirm, being able to show that you heard, I was in a meeting with a vendor who will remain nameless because we've all made this mistake. So yeah, I'll be generous with the credit or with the feedback here. I won't be too harsh. But I was in the meeting and transparently, it was just not a super great use of time. I had maybe 2 or 3 things that really mattered to me And Sabina, I love how the first thing you said when you brought up this concept in this slide is asking someone what matters to you. It's a simple question, but it can go a long ways, because in this example, with this vendor, the thing that really mattered to me was the reporting in their software. I had other team members there and other things mattered to them. And the meeting was not a total failure or flop, but it was like a 2-3 hour meeting. And I probably could have gotten what I needed to get across and be gone in 15 to 20 minutes. And so asking what matters to you, let us make sure that we understand and that we're delivering that. I just think it goes a long way.
And then the persona too, right? Like if they knew, they could come into the call, if they hadn't asked you, they might at least anticipate a little bit, okay, well, this is his role. This is likely what he cares about, because other companies we've worked with have similar leaders who care about the same things. And so you can have a little bit of deductive reasoning applied to get you started and then go from there. It's very common that the economic buyer isn't the same as the super user or even the team working to implement that. Those personas change, and what matters to them changes as a result. The next one is proactivity. And we in customer success live and breathe by this. This is what gives us jobs. It's our job to be proactive. If we didn't have the proactive element of B2B SaaS or technology, we would have just sales teams and we would have support teams. This concept, whether you call it customer success or maybe account management or customer outcomes, the narrative over the last few years has been CS is dead or it's not dead. I don't care what we call it, but the concept of protecting your revenue is critical, right? We know it's much more expensive to acquire a new customer than it is to keep what you have. And, going back, I don't know, it's 13 or 15 years when TSIA launched the layer model, right? Land, adopt, expand, renew. This concept still rings true today. Let's really focus on, what we have in our hands now and give them the best darn experience possible. And even if they've been a customer with you for 10 years already, and they're not going through that traditional journey map I showed because they've already onboarded, they're in that loop where they're experiencing things. And if you think about the concept of, like rings on a tree, right? You've seen when you cut a tree stump and there's the different rings, and that shows you roughly the age of the tree. And scientists can actually deduce what was going on in the climate. They can say, oh, this year there was a fire, or this year there was a flood, or we had higher carbon dioxide or monoxide or whatever going on in that area at that time. It's really fascinating. And similarly, we have to think about our customers as a cross-section of where they are. It's not just what they've purchased, how many users they have, how much revenue they represent, not just the personas like we talked about, but it's also where are they relative to other customers in your customer base, and looking at them as a cohort basis as well. So the reason I talk about all that is really to think about when you know where they are, where they're coming from, you can meet them at that spot and continue on that journey with them from their vantage point. And that's part of that personalization piece. But proactivity, you can look at them on a cohort basis and say, these customers joined us 5 years ago. We didn't have the onboarding program that we have now. We didn't have in-app tooltips. We didn't have self-guided videos. We didn't have webinars that we were running. We didn't even have a marketing team. We're a startup. We had one person running social media, if that, right? So being thoughtful about what was their experience. And when we're looking at the word they and their experience, it might not be Robert. It might be somebody else who signed the software agreement originally, who were there for onboarding. They may not even be in the mix anymore. So there's that element of reselling. So proactively thinking about, where they are is important. And one thing that's really important to me that I learned several years ago before COVID here in Orange County, there was a luncheon I went to where the founder and chairman of the data software company, GUIDEcx, his name is Dean Stoker. He was speaking and he said something that just like this, someone always owns the moment from Disney. It just really stuck with me. And that was the idea of, giving them what they want before it becomes a need. Like there's things that I wouldn't have ever known that were important to me that my service providers have helped me with. This image on the right here is raspberry sorbet. Well, I don't know if it's raspberry. To me, in my mind, it's raspberry sorbet because it's red. It could be strawberry, watermelon. But I had a dinner party experience where I was served sorbet as a palate cleanser in between the appetizer and the entree. And my first thought was, why am I getting dessert now? Maybe was that dinner? I'm still really hungry. But actually, like this is a mechanism to prepare your palate for the next course. This is a fancy, sophisticated thing we're all doing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. But I didn't know my palate needed cleansing. Sure enough, it's a wonderful, delightful experience. And you feel refreshed and ready to take on what's next. That meant my need was anticipated. I didn't even know it was a need. I don't know that it's really a need, it's a want now, but it's a great one, right?
Yeah, I love this example though, because it just shows, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard this criticism or feedback from customers who maybe didn't submit a great CSAT score or NPS score, and you reach out and you don't have to raise your hand, but if this sounds familiar, just like, oh, I didn't really feel, consulted, or I didn't really feel too um, like led in the experience. It just kind of felt like they were kind of going through the motions. I wanted more. I wanted more best practice. I wanted more wisdom or whatnot. And this sorbet palate cleanser example is a perfect thing to keep in mind. So I'm sure that the chef in Sabina's example, and if anyone else has ever had this experience, the chef is not thinking to themselves, how can I make this a fancier experience? How can I make this a really bougie night? No, that's not their intent at all. Their intent is, well, it comes from their expertise in knowing what is about to happen next. And because they know what's coming next in the journey that they're offering you, they know what you need now. And exactly to that point, and that great quote, give them what they want before it becomes a need. If I know I'm about to serve you something that really requires a reset from what we just did, then I'm going to give you a palate cleanser. Not because I want to be fancy, not because I'm trying to impress you, but because I have the expertise to know that. And so same thing for our customer journeys, right? If I know I'm going from this type of work that we were doing that was really hands-on, that required a bunch of meetings, that was an on-site, that was this, that was that, and then I'm going to this maybe lower touch model, or I'm going to kind of change the mode with which we communicate, or now I need you to do a bunch of homework and it's not going to be as much back and forth, it's more on you. I need something in between. I need to make sure that there's a clear delineation and that I'm not setting my customer up for a jarring experience, because otherwise they are going to have a need for a reset, whereas you could have given them what they wanted before it became a need. You could have given them that reset. And that's why this customer journey mapping is so valuable and leads to such impressive retention improvement and such impressive profit improvement, is because you've taken that time and you're now being proactive and putting in experiences that are going to make people go, whoa, this was a really fancy, wonderful experience. The same way, you had that experience at dinner, when in reality, you're not trying to be overly complex or fancy. It's just that you know what's coming next. So you're going to make sure they get what they need now.
That's a great summarization. The tactical tip here, right, where you can apply that concept is thinking about partnering as an onboarding team, engaging at the end of the sales process and serving up quick tips for successful onboarding. So the teams internally on your customer side can operationalize and tee up what they need to internally to be ready. A lot of software falls flat in an implementation because the customer doesn't actually do what they're supposed to do. It's
Yeah.
help me help you, right? And so if you have an expectation up front, we're going to need about 4 hours a week for 3 weeks of your Salesforce administrator's time. And this is the
Yeah.
type of data that we're going to make sure. So, even with us, one of the key things I do is I send out a questionnaire before we do, a gain side optimization or plan hat work or anything like that, where I need to know, do they have the concept of a
Yep.
unified customer ID? I can't connect systems if there's not any kind of a mapping. So those are the types of things. If you set those expectations, it really makes this a lot easier and it helps us be proactive in the approach. So thinking about, if you're an onboarding team member and you want to try to get involved a little bit sooner, that's some of the feedback we've heard before this call. That's one way that you can do that is being thoughtful about the pain points that you're experiencing as an implementation team, capturing those and thinking about, okay, what can we do to help get ahead of those? And is it in fact doing better expectation setting with our customer, which means also sales enablement, making sure that they're aware of the implications of things.
Yeah. And I can hear people maybe responding and saying, well, it depends. It depends on this and it depends on this, what we need. And I would just say start with a ballpark. If you don't know exactly, like I love the example you gave, Sabina, about how many hours do we need from your Salesforce admin. Like that's really helpful to know for the person who needs to be on call. And maybe you're going to say, well, it depends how complicated this is or how much that is, but give a ballpark. Say over the next 3 weeks, we might need anywhere from 5 to 15 hours of your admin's time. And here's what it depends on. But that way you're at least teeing up and nobody's caught by surprise.
One of the things that I was astounded by is when we're working in B2B, there's over an average of over 200 applications that any one company is subscribed to at a moment in time. So thinking about your own business, you have obviously, your email suite, you might have a live chat component,
Crazy.
Slack separately, you think about all the tools, your CRM, your marketing automation tools. I'm sure there's a, HR tool in there, all kinds of things.
There's CFOs shuddering hearing that stat.
Right? I know it's true.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, that stat is probably 2.5 years old now. So with a lot of the economic changes, maybe there's been some more consolidation. But let's just even be super conservative. Let's say 100.
Yep.
How many contracts, how many CSMs, how many renewals, how much information and noise are certain roles, especially now with SaaS, the economic buyer in many cases is now head of IT. It's not a chief customer officer in our case with whom we're working a lot of the time. So they're really interfacing with a lot and they've got limited time. They need us to be proactive. And now that ties into this third piece, this third principle is efficiency, right? So we have to deliver moments that matter without wasting time or resources. And so, how do we do that? There's certain things that we can automate. When you have repeated tasks that are consistently the same every day, that's a good wake-up call to say there's got to be some element of automation, right? So like when I'm, entertaining guests in my home, when I'm having a dinner party, something my mom taught me as a little hack was, get the coffee pot ready and program it to start when you think you're going to be serving dessert or right before you're serving dessert. So the coffee is ready. I don't have to get up and go grind beans and fill the reservoir with water and get everything out, have it all dialed in. It's a simple hack, coffee pot automation hasn't been a new invention by any means. It's been around for some time. Similarly, there's a lot of other things that we can be thinking about to help our customers. So when you're thinking about automating the routine and personalizing certain touch points, those are things like, sequences, email sequences. A lot of different applications have, different triggers and automations. And I know, Harris, you had a key one with GUIDEcx that you wanted to mention that a lot of your customers are finding really helpful. If you want to touch on that.
This efficiency section just spoke to us because it's a lot of the reason why we started the company. Like we wanted, you have these consumer B2C experiences with like package tracking where I know, if I order from Amazon or FedEx is handling the shipping, I know where the package is at all times. And proactively, they're updating me on when it's coming or if it's late or if they don't have it anymore and the order needs to be canceled. And you see the same thing with pizza now, right? They'll tell you every step of the way what's happening. You see the same thing with flights. It's all over, I think, in our consumer lives. And we wanted to make that possible for businesses, for their clients, for their customers. And so, yeah, I think one of the biggest aha moments for our customers is when the weekly status update goes out without them having to do anything. And that update goes out and says, hey, this is when we're forecasted to finish. These are the tasks that are coming up. Here's what's overdue and needs attention. And rather than somebody spending a lot of time manually collecting that, the system just sends it out and makes sure everyone's aware. Making sure that a dependency is in place to then trigger the next task, and that when if Sabina, you mark yours done, and then I'm up next, the system automates out the delivery of, hey, here's exactly what you need to do. And it's just, yeah, I mean, I like to think your mother would be proud of what we built because it's the same kind of concept. Like, hey, just get the coffee pot programmed, get it ready. And one thing that we've run into that I'll just add in here that I think we've learned over the years is sometimes it is intimidating for people to try to set up automation because of the unknowns. So for example, with the coffee pot analogy, well, I'm going to program this for 10 p.m., but what if we finish really early, or what if we finish really late? Then I don't want to program it. So I'm just not going to program it. And I'm going to do the manual work because I'm just more comfortable with that. So I'm going to leave the dinner party. I'm going to go grind the beans. I'm going to fill the reservoir. I'm going to do all this stuff. It's not the right way, in my experience, to approach it. I think especially when it comes to automation with your customer journey, you're in control of the copy, you're in control of the wording, you're in control of the timing. So if you feel like you have a good idea to send out certain communication, but you're a little worried that, it may be, what if it's a little early or a little late? Tweak the wording a little bit so that it resonates at either step, or give yourself a release valve or an out, so that you can put pause on it and not send it, and send it later. But you should still set up these automations, because ideally 8 times out of 10, they hit at the exact right moment, and that coffee starts brewing, getting ready, and everybody's just thrilled with the timing of it, and you didn't have to leave your dinner party.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good call out. And the idea of that extra little step of just aim small to miss small, like pilot it. Just if you're a CSM, like try something new with just 5 customers of yours. Maybe, I use Zoom, there's Zoom clip functionality. Record quick little 30-second generic enough, but specific to where they are in their journey. So it might be a little message that says, hey, congratulations on your go live. My team and I are so excited that you've reached this wonderful milestone. I look forward to being in touch with you in the coming weeks. And that's it. And it's a little video. And even if it's a manual upload, in the sense that you're triggered by your professional services team within your tooling that you're using within, GUIDEcx gives you a ping. Then from there, you can even push that pre-recorded message out yourself, and then, or ideally configuring it to auto send depending on your tech stack.
Yeah.
I want to dive in a little bit now and give you some actual practical tips and things that are unlike any that you may have heard before, as a mechanism to actually put some of this into practice. So the key piece is innovative and low cost. A lot of us have a lot of us have tried things historically where we have emails going out that are part of a standard drip campaign, or maybe like a generic anniversary note, thank you for being with us for 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. And that's perfectly fine. Like, as I mentioned a minute ago, you got to start somewhere. It still feels special, but to really do something that's innovative and creative and budget friendly, I think these next steps you'll find that will help you make a difference. And especially where they're leveraging emerging tech, it has a double whammy effect. It's not only do they feel surprised and delighted, but also they're intrigued. And in B2B, in my area of expertise, I love B2B because they're also running a business. They're also trying to figure it out on how to take care of their customers. So their problem, you're solving, and you're helping them be the champion with their customers. And in other cases, if it goes really well, you might even be helping them be the champion and hero within their company, where they may be getting a promotion because of the awesome time savings that they brought to their team and to their customers. So they will see these ideas, and I think they'll be pretty compelled and excited. But before we go into some of those ideas, okay, keep you waiting for just a second. I would love to hear the most unexpected yet delightful customer experience that maybe one of you have ever had, if you'd be willing to share. And maybe, Harris, to break the ice, maybe you'd be willing to go first.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of embarrassing personally story, but one that resonates. You shared that great Disney quote earlier. I was at Disneyland, a bit of a family reunion with my in-laws, and there were 10 little kids there, ranging from like 2 to 13, 14. And coming off of the Indiana Jones ride, oh man, I have a pit in my stomach just remembering it. We lost I have 4 boys, and we lost my 3rd son. And it was horrifying. Just that moment where the worst case scenarios run through your mind, and it's not like, oh, hold on, he'll turn up. The crowd, the park was unusually packed. Um, and eventually, we told someone who worked there, and immediately they got on their walkie-talkie, called it in, and they got a response back right away saying, yes, we have him. And so this individual walked us back, man, I'm getting chills even just remembering this, walked us back to a spot on Main Street, And they had this little room where I'm not happy to say there were a couple other kids, but there were a couple other kids. We weren't the only people that lost our kids. Um,
I'm sure not the
and
last either.
Yep. And guess what? These kids were eating, snacks. They were being well taken care of. Our son was obviously so happy to see us. We were so happy to see him. It was a tearful, joyful reunion. And they could not have been nicer. And then as we were walking out, we noticed they had put a sticker on his back with our phone number. So they just thought of everything. They had this whole, and I'm sure there are behind the scenes things that I didn't even realize were happening. But as soon as they recognized the lost child, they took him to a designated place. They made sure that he was well taken care of. They were, they also made sure that like we had pictures on our phone of him and us so that we had to have like many of them. And they just did, the reason I think of this as an unexpected yet delightful experience is because it was horrifying. And I think, hopefully the analogy resonates. Like sometimes in the highest escalation with our customers, and sometimes I'm sure we've all had those moments where it's like, oh no, um, that is where this customer journey map can really help save you and take it from something that's a big escalation to, wow, they handled that so well. There's nowhere else I would rather, nobody else I'd rather work with.
Your recall of, the emotion that you felt with that is compelling as a parent also. And obviously really glad that your son was safe and that they have a program to not only return them to the parents, but to feed them snacks while they're waiting, which is brilliant. Another Disney win. But then also, the happy end of that story you're feeling now, telling all of us on this call, and there's 70 plus people on this call. That's also going to continually, perpetuate that sentiment about Disney. And, there's been some really good comments here. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but Kashana, I mean, I just got goosebumps listening or reading yours, right? You bought a flip phone for your mom who has dementia. Very, very terrible disease. I'm sorry that you're going through that and that she's going through that. The tech offered to make her a label for the phone that had her name and number. And for those, maybe who aren't
Wow.
about memory care,
Wow.
but that's really,
Wow.
it's really cool. Allergic reactions.
Uh-oh. This goes
Wow.
right
Yeah.
into the
I
example
know.
you're
I
giving,
know.
Sabina.
That's right. The fact that they followed up and checked in, I mean, on a, similar level, my dog has received a vaccine. They call me the next day to make sure she's okay. So there's all these different levels of things. And notice that what most of us are sharing are stories about our world as
Personal.
consumers
Yep.
or patients, in the medical world. And that's really insightful because to your point earlier, Harris, like at the end of the day, we're working with humans. I have a former colleague who had the best saying, and we actually put it on t-shirts for one of my customer success summits, because we used to talk about licenses like seats, right? How many seats did they buy? And he brought to the table this idea that seats are people. So we had a t-shirt that said seats are people because it's
Yes.
changed the way we think about that. At the end of the day, we want to treat them like they're people. These
Yep.
experiences that we're talking about are people experiences.
Yep.
It can be done in that B2B setting. Well, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure it was hard to share a lot of good ones. And the more that we can continue to think about those and figure out how can I apply this in my workplace? What can I try? How can I, get a pilot going and see if it sticks? Don't be afraid to try those things. They're pretty cool. So some 5 innovative ideas, low cost tactics, and ways that you can start to get some of these things going that really help elevate your customer experience. So if I didn't have the word AI or talk about artificial intelligence in my presentation, it wouldn't be 2025 and I would probably be hiding under a rock. So, but that being said, there's so much more data at our fingertips now. And there's companies, or you might be listening and saying, well, I don't have budget to invest in tools. My CIO won't allow it because of security. There's ways to overcome that. Almost every single application that we all have right now has launched their own version of some sort of a co-pilot, some sort of an AI cockpit, or some overlay that's helping you accelerate your workday. And that data is available. So, leveraging what you can is pretty critical, and being thoughtful about that, AI powered tools and using them for personalization. So, we noticed you started using Feature X, more frequently, we have a guide that will help you level up your skills. All you're doing is taking data about how they were acting in your system, and it's triggering an email with a tool or PDF attachment for them. So things like that are pretty key. Another one is augmented reality. I know this sounds a little weird. You think about, that years past at Coachella, and there was like a Tupac hologram and, that kind of stuff, right? We're thinking
I
about,
remember that.
right? Yeah, we're thinking about these things in a different way than we ever have before. And it is possible. These things are possible. So an actual tactic here could be thinking about your onboarding experience and having a QR code that comes up, and they can actually scan that QR code and it'll take them to a quick tip, some sort of a quick helpful guide to meet them exactly where they're at. So you don't have to have even a video embedded, something that they can do pretty quickly, get them to a quick tip tool set. They could even potentially meet a virtual product specialist that helps them out. And it's, you leveraging a bot to talk about some of the key features and how they'll benefit from each. A tool that does this really well, I use Update AI a lot for my call recordings, and I love the lightning tips. I messaged Josh, the CEO, the other day, and I said, I love this feature because I'm the admin of that instance for us, logging in and looking at some of the configurations. I'm like, wait, what does that really mean? And instead of waiting for a pop-up, it has on the left panel, like, quick lightning tips. And it was like, boom, boom, boom. And it knew my persona, what I would matter or what I would care about, why it mattered to me. And it was really helpful. And so that was a quick way that was leveraged. Another one that's often forgotten about is co-creation with our customers. So we talk about a lot in customer success in the experience world about mutual action planning, identifying a success plan with your customer, that it's mutual. We're going to contribute our time, our service, our products to help you get to your end goals. But, customer, you have 3 hours a week we need from your Salesforce admin, or, we need you to get things particularly dialed in so that we can actually get in and help us help you. We need to also be leveraging our customers in collaboration to figure out what they want. They're quick to give feature requests, but how can we help them feel heard and empowered? And maybe we've already defined what the feature is going to be, but maybe we'll bring them in to talk to us and share what the feature should be called. Maybe we're going to have them come in and help talk about, the benefit of this feature, and we want them to be the one to help talk about it with their peer group and our user community. So I think it's kind of a simple thing that doesn't cost a lot of money. It's a pretty easy way to get them to think about co-creating a blog post or getting thoughtful about what they're seeing out in the industry and why, and bringing them into the customer advisory board or asking them to, lead a quick session at an industry summit, a roundtable conversation. So bringing them into that, I think, is pretty key. And it's a touch point, puts a feather in their cap. They feel valued, like they're a thought leader, a voice in the space, and that they matter. What they share matters. Another one we talk about is this idea of like behind the scenes tours, like a virtual tour of like a day in the life. We did this once with my support team in the Philippines. We had a quick video from literally when they rode up on their motorcycle in the morning, when they checked in, some guy grabbed a banana, he sat at his desk, and like the whole experience then from person to person. It was just a quick 2-minute video, and we shared that with our customers. Like, these are the people that are on the phone, that are answering your live chats, that are engaging with your email support tickets and troubleshooting with our engineering team. So bringing like that personalization back into it and creating some of that interactive content. And I talk about holograms, and I'm kind of joking about that, but there are feature sets and cool apps out there that you can kind of bring that hologram. It's not that they come out of your computer, but I mean the visual image of essentially almost an avatar that is like them. You're matching the way that that they're engaging with your product, and it's the quick tips I talked about, but it's somebody actually talking to you about it in a relatable way. So I think giving your teams the opportunity to have those visualizations into your back of the office, so to speak, or into what's going into some of your R&D, it's another quick way to help them understand who you are, what you're serving, and why it's important. And then another one is the idea of weaving it all together. And I mentioned in the beginning, understanding where your customer is and meeting them there. And so some of these approaches I'm mentioning may not necessarily be the right fit for that particular customer, but ask them what is, and then go deep on it and revisit that often. Your champion may have changed, so doing the resell motion is going to be kind of important to them. Maybe asking another customer if they'd be willing to talk to your other current customer and introducing them. I just did that recently. I have two really awesome powerhouse chief customer officers at companies, non-competing spaces, and both are struggling with something similar. And so I asked one, would you be open to me introducing you to someone that I think the world of as well? And asked the other person, and then made the mutual introduction. And so they're actually meeting monthly to just share ideas with each other. So there's little things like that that are top of mind that you can do. Putting it all together, some of the things to be thoughtful about is that customer lifecycle mapping really can drive meaningful, effective management and engagement with your customers. So strategically plan and optimize these touch points. As I mentioned, we'll get out a quick tip guide such that it will help you make the case internally. You may not own the whole customer lifecycle. You may not be responsible for what happens in sales. You may not be responsible for even the renewal. Maybe somebody else or another team owns that. But be thoughtful and intentional about what you can control. Maybe your role is onboarding and professional services and getting teams live. Map out your own journey within that stage, and doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't even need to be AI or tech driven to start. Have a consistent checklist of things that are not just tactical. We got to get them user provisioned. We got to make sure that they have the right permission levels, et cetera, et cetera. There's more to it than that you could be intentional about. With that, involve the onboarding teams early, making sure that first impression that customers have after they've signed a contract is just as shiny and beautiful and polished as it was in the pre-sales process. It's really critical. And just like when I'm hosting a dinner party and guests walk into my home, even if I'm serving Cajun grilled salmon, I don't want people to smell fish when they walk into my house, if you know what I mean. I want it to be fresh and clean and maybe have a nice candle going, right? So really think about that onboarding team needs to be involved early as possible, be primed with short, sweet, clear messaging about what they need to do next, what the customer can expect next. And then lastly, technology and personalization can coexist at scale. So there's things, you can't do everything for everybody, but I think there's some key things that you can do to enable some quick wins, meet them where they are, whether they're just joining you as a customer or they've been a customer of yours for 10 years. They're still people at the end of this. Helpful reminders would be quick ways to support them, and doing that in an automated fashion makes that even easier. So remember, like when you're orchestrating things of a journey, whether it's in your own department, maybe it's even in your own book of business if you're a CSM, or if you're a leader and you're looking across the entire customer journey through the organization, that stellar customer experience is like hosting a dinner party. It's about the right mix of preparation, timing. You don't want the food to be cold. You don't want it to come out at the wrong time. But you also have to have a dash of charm in there too. Making sure that there's a memorable soiree, those little unexpected, delightful moments. Maybe it's a surprise treat the chef brings out, that maybe it's that palate cleanser, that sorbet, or spontaneous toast, thanking you for being at the restaurant or for joining you at your dinner party. It will really leave guests with a sentiment, a raving fan, and they're going to want to come back for more. I am happy to support you. If you have any questions, feel free to scan this QR code. It will book me for 30 minutes and I can help you answer questions that you have, and look forward to answering questions with a little bit of time we have left.
Sabina, you're welcome to keep that QR code up if you want,
Sure.
just in case anyone is just seeing it. I'm going to start the Q&A off. We got 5 minutes left here. And thank you, everyone who's with us. I put it in the chat, but the slides and the recording will be sent out to everyone who registered. But let me start it off with a question that we got that I think leads into also this QR code and your generous offer to meet with people. Because sometimes time is required to go deeper, but somebody is asking, hey, as a person that owns customer onboarding and customer success, we're a small team, where do you recommend that we even start? How do we avoid building something overly complicated to get us started? I just want to give a plug not only for you, Sabina, and meeting with somebody who can help get into the tactics, but one of the best things that I've done and seen others do is start by literally going through the experience yourself. And I don't mean that as like an exercise of trying to think of what the customer goes through, but go through it yourself. Um, Try to go through the sales cycle yourself. Obviously you got to work with other teams. Try to go through the onboarding yourself. But if you go through it yourself, things will stand out to you right away that need to or can be addressed. A couple others that came in, Sabina, that would love your thoughts on while we wrap up. Outside of retention, what other metrics are important to track to measure customer success following their journey map?
Time to first value. So
Time.
that's a key one where we're looking at, and then again, that definitely varies from business to business. So what does value even mean, right? Value is a feeling, and ROI, return on investment, is a calculation. Both are very, very important, and I see them used interchangeably far too often. When we talk about time to first value, it really should be time to both time to first ROI and time to value. We don't know what those are unless you ask your customer up front. I came from a professional services automation platform, MavenLink, now known as Cantata. And with that, we would identify from a customer in the sales process and confirm at kickoff what they wanted their billable utilization to be, what kind of time savings they expected each week, et cetera, et cetera. We captured those. And then when we hit those milestones, it was a celebratory moment. And we were able to talk about that was the first value they received relative to what they purchased. Harris, you talked about this application that you were working with a vendor, you cared about reporting. If you got that reporting visualization that you needed to make effective decisions, that's really probably your first value that you received. So what is the duration that it took for you to get there? Are we talking years or are we talking weeks? And that's really important to baseline that. As I mentioned, Virtuous, they reduced time to first value by 60 days. They captured metrics that mattered for their personas and then established a baseline and then chipped away at it from there to see what could they do to be more efficient, to get customers the feeling and the calculation of the time savings or whatever it was.
Yeah. Another one, and you mentioned one tool, but do you have AI recommended tools for customer journey, or tools that do custom messages based on usage patterns, anything, whether it's in like the campaign outreach space, based on certain triggers, or in the AI space? What are some tools that you've really liked using or seen
And
others use?
there's many. I mean, if any of you are already using, GUIDEcx, if you're already using anything in the customer success platform space, if you're using Gainsight or Trim0 to Tango, Plan Hat, Vitally, Data Plan, I mean, there's lots and lots out there. Client Success, also Utah-based company, they have a lot of those application features built in, or are even layering in more with AI. Gainsight bought Staircase.
Yeah.
There's these mechanisms because there was a hunger and there was a need and people were buying separate tools. Now there's a lot more consolidation. There's also tools out there that if you don't have a customer success platform, what can you use just to get started? I mean, even within Gmail, there's some capabilities to do some schedule sends and a couple other things. So as far as AI tracking and enablement, there's again, and this is a guide too that we have that showcases sort of the different areas of the ecosystem that companies typically lean on and what you can use to get those. But I would say if you try to use what you have first rather than investing in something new.
Maybe last thing that we'll try to end with, even though this might be a longer question that requires that QR code. I just thought Beth had a great question. Any suggestions of how to measure impact aside from surveys, or maybe specific questions to include in a survey?
How to measure impact without surveying, without asking your customer. I mean, revenue. I mean, that's a big one. If they're expanding, they're not going to
Yeah.
expand. They're not going to add more
Yeah.
licenses. They're not going to want to buy more from you. They're not going to want to serve as a reference for a customer. If they're not, what I mean, the sales process, they're not going to say, yes, go buy, so I think those
Yeah.
are some other ones you could look at.
Yeah, I think the surveys, those outreaches, but revenue usage, I would add. Are they using the tool more for them? Kind of what does their adoption in the platform look like? But thank you so much, Sabina, and thank you everyone who attended. We really appreciate it. We had people from all over the world, by the way, people in Costa Rica and Canada and India, all over the United States. So thank you. That means a ton to us. We will try to not only make sure that everyone gets the slides and the recording, but any questions that we didn't get to, and I apologize, there were some that we didn't get to, we will try to capture and send out, or Sabina and I will post them on LinkedIn. We'll try to make sure that you get as much as you can. Please feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're crazy about this stuff. I mean, we could talk about it all day long. So yeah, we're happy to help anyone at any stage they're at. And yeah, can't thank you enough, Sabina. Have a great rest of your day, and enjoy the rest of the week, everyone.
Thank you.